So thank you guys for being here. This is step one. The bravery of just coming in these times is something to, be applauded, honestly, because we've sort of been messaged this idea that if you even stand up against an issue like this, there's something wrong with you. So I want to give a round of applause to all of you guys for actually coming today. So I feel like I don't need to do an intro because she did such a great one. I'll just dive right in. The goal of critical race theory is Marxism. It's what will appear to be a new type of racism in America, but it's really not new. This is something that is permeated in color revolutions and in Marxist revolutions all over the world, from China to Cuba to Venezuela. The list goes on. And a lot of people may not understand the connection to Marxism. So I want to be very clear about this. One of the chief architects of critical race theory is a guy named Ibram Kendi. If you've never heard of him, you should look him up and read a little bit about him because he's one of the architects here. And I'm going to give you guys a quote from him. He said, "You cannot be anti-racist unless you are anti-capitalist." Okay, so that tells you right away the solution to this is the elimination of capitalism. And then one of the people he works with, Cheryl Harris, UCLA Law, she's another pioneer of critical race theory. She actually just recently said, property rights are a function of whiteness. To achieve equality, we need to dismantle whiteness and therefore dismantle property rights and then redistribute wealth. Okay? Does that sound like a good idea to you guys? Because it doesn't sound like a good idea to me. In fact, it sounds like exactly what my family fled in Cuba. And I'm telling you right now, one of the biggest problems in Cuba was that there were not enough willing people to show up, stand up and say, this is wrong. We're willing to ruffle feathers. We are willing to be unpopular. We are willing for you not to like me, but I'm standing up for what's right. What you guys have going for you is that we actually have some polling to back this up, that 75% of parents in America oppose critical race theory. Okay? It's the silence that's killing us. So we need to stop being silent and not be afraid to speak up about this. I want to tell you guys a little bit about my own kids' experience, because as a dad, honestly, I think that's the area where I feel most qualified to comment on this, because I met somebody in here who sort of had a similar story where their family fled another state. I call it the People's Republic of California. And there, when my kids went to school, this started to pop up. In California, it's always about 5 to 7 years ahead in terms of what social issue is going to be pushed. And so they started pushing this years ago, and when we really recognized it was a problem was they brought a speaker into the school, to our oldest daughter's school. She was in 4th grade at the time, and the speaker spoke to all the elementary school students and told them that they have white privilege and that they're inherently, they owe something for these immutable characteristics they were born with. He also told them they can't sit together unless a minority is present because it may be an unconscious bias, but it is racism, okay? I looked this guy up afterwards to find out he organized Antifa rallies. And I'm being literal here, organized Los Angeles Antifa rallies. So I went to the school, and the school said, there's nothing we can do about this. That started to become the overwhelming answer with every new element of critical race theory that was pushed. So naturally, as good parents, we pull our kids out of school, and we move to Tennessee, okay? Like any good parent would. But sadly, I'm here to tell you that this ideology is now taking root here, because at the end of the day, the root is not in one state or another. The root is at the core of academia. So when we send somebody to university, they fundamentally start to learn to hate the values and ideology that has made us proud to be Americans for our entire lives. And so when they're messaged that Marxism is the solution to all the perceived problems that their professors bring up, they start to believe it. And then they end up in a classroom with your child, educating them and teaching them about life. Your child spends more time in many cases with their teacher, who may have this ideology, than they do with you. That should scare you. The amount that we don't know about our teachers who teach our children should scare us with the amount of time and influence they have on our children. Beyond that, this is not just a school issue. Your kids consume entertainment, they listen to music, they watch YouTube, they're on iPads, they have all this stuff. I mean, some of you guys, they don't. My kids don't. But a lot of other kids don't. Being a director in Hollywood kind of wakes you up to a lot of the things your kids should not have. But I will tell you this, we need to take stock of how all of these things work together to destroy a child's mind and to make them turn against the values they're raised with. I can give you some examples. How many people in the room have heard of brain pop? Okay, so that's a lot of people. Okay, Brain Pop, for those of you who don't know, it's sort of a little learning program, I'd call it, where they give tools. There's an app. Kids learn with it. It's supposed to be fun. When it first started, it was great. My kids loved it. And I checked through everything meticulously. There was nothing questionable at all. But it's sort of the bait and switch that gets pulled in a lot of things that kids consume. After a while, they started to bake in critical race theory, and then we had to pull the plug. How many of you know that Brain Pop is pushing critical race theory now? So that's not nearly as many hands as went up that knew Brain Pop. So that's something important for parents to understand, is take stock of everything your child consumes, because a lot of it has this stuff built into it, whether it's TV shows or whether it's things along these lines. But let's move on to Tennessee, okay? So in Tennessee, after moving here, I'm going to tell you about two experiences we had. One was our child of Latino descent went to class. And keep in mind, he is in first grade when this happens. And he was told that he needs to refer to Latino people as Latinx. My son, by the way, is the only Latino person in the classroom. And is told he needs to refer to Latinos as Latinx. He comes home, he's like, Dad, what's Latinx? And so I have to explain it to him. And for those of you who don't know, this is a new word made up by the people who are purveyors of critical race theory that degenderizes the Spanish language and says that there should not inherently be any gender in the term that you refer to Latinos with, because they don't want gender to have anything to do with anything. So, of course, gender has to go. So I had to go to the school and I had to tell them, look, first of all, my child's the only Latino in the class, but secondly, this has been polled 2 times, once by Pew Research and once by Think Progress, who's actually a very progressive left-wing polling firm. They found 99% and 98% of Latinos do not want to be called Latinx, yet they keep doing it. So the question is, why are they pushing something that's so wildly unpopular? And that's the entirety of critical race theory. And the answer to that is very simple. This has nothing to do with racial justice, racial equality, or racial anything. This has to do with control and Marxism, because from the beginning of history, when Marxists wanted to take control of a country, they divided people by race. The most dangerous thing to Marxists is the unity of a country, where we stop looking at each other by the color of our skin and start looking at each other for the content of our character. We've moved so far away from the dream of Martin Luther King that it's almost hard to see it anymore. And you definitely can't see it in our schools. And so our goal as parents has to be to teach our children and make them warriors for that goal. Be judged by who you are, what your character is. Be a man or woman of strong character. If anybody ever judges you for what's on the outside, they have the problem, not you. The more we make our children warriors of that and examples of that, the more change we're going to see. But our voices are so critical right now because we are the last defense for our children. I trust parents to make the best decisions for their children, not a school district and not a teachers' union. And I want to make very clear, there's some parents here who don't have kids in public school. This is not just a public school problem. This is a private school problem too, okay? A lot of the private schools here in Tennessee belong to an organization called NAIS, okay? NAIS started a new conference called the People of Color Conference, okay, that they started doing a couple years ago. And their most recent conference had 2 panels on it. One of the panels was No More White Boys Behaving Badly, and the other panel was No More White Tears. Okay? These are panels that were attended by a large number of educators that teach here in this county. You deserve to know which teachers went to that and if they believe that ideology, but you're not getting those answers. And that's why one of the things we need to propose and one of the things we need to push for, and this is going to be one of the action items I ask you guys to get behind today, is reach out to your legislators and tell them, if you may have heard, we have a critical race theory bill in our legislature right now, but there's a problem with it. It doesn't have real teeth for enforcement. We need a parental reporting ability within this law that allows you as a parent to report when there's a violation of the law, whether it's violating political neutrality or whether it's violating critical race theory rules. And a board of parents needs to be formed from every county in the state. And that board of parents makes the decision what happens. Now, in these circles, you have to understand that it doesn't end here. This is all associated to other political issues. I touched on gender, but the economic issues are another one. And those are other things I need you guys as parents to look out for in your schools. And if you see them, make sure that you give tips to Moms for Liberty or to me. Anybody can reach out to me on social media at Robby Starbuck. My DMs are always open, and we will help you expose what's going on in these schools, because at the end of the day, if we don't do that, if we don't go that extra mile, this problem isn't going to get solved. But I also want to talk to you guys about 2022, okay? 2022, we're going to have school board elections. It's an exciting thing, isn't it? We need you guys involved on every level with this. Find out who the school board candidates are. As we get closer, more people are going to announce. But we need to ask very clear questions about critical race theory and about Marxism. We need to ask them, number one, do you support this? Number two, how do you define racism? Is it something that can only be experienced by a select group of people, or is it something that could be experienced by anybody? And then we need to also ask them, are you supportive of teaching about Marxist atrocities in school? Because our children deserve to be educated on the systematic murder of people who lived in Marxist countries. I also want to note for you guys where this goes. Our kids are young now for a large part, but to understand where this goes, I want to read you a quote. There is a Stanford candidate for school government right now, and they recently said white people need to be eradicated, okay? The school didn't respond by kicking them off. In fact, the school paper endorsed them. Okay, that's Stanford. That's a school that's actually supposed to be somewhat conservative. And they're not. They've been taken over by radicals. They are not alone. Across our country and universities, schools have been taken over by radicals, and it's not just academia. This is happening in every segment of culture, from our media, our entertainment, our music, and our schools, and that's most critical. So the secondary issue I hope you all can get behind is school choice, because our children deserve better education than they're getting right now. And I trust parents to make the best decision about where their children are going to go to school. The money needs to follow the child. And I can give you an example. For anybody with doubts about school choice in this room, I'm going to give you an example about Baltimore, because it's one that I read this really long piece on, and it's just excruciating what these kids have had done to them. We spend $17,500 per child in a place like Baltimore, okay? And in their schools, in their high schools, less than 10% graduate proficient in math and reading. That's unacceptable. This is the United States of America. We are supposed to be the greatest nation on God's green earth, and if we are going to be that nation, we need to act like it, and our kids need to be educated. And they're not getting educated in these schools. So again, in 2022, that's an issue I need you guys to back us up on. School choice is critical. Our school boards are critical. We need you to use your voices at your own schools. I need you to talk to your principals. I need you to talk to your children's teachers. And you're going to have to do what too many people didn't do during other revolutions. You're going to have to ask hard questions and feel uncomfortable doing it. You're going to have to ask them, how do you define racism? Are you supportive of critical race theory? Are you teaching our kids about all of world history, about all the atrocities that happened, so that they learn and so that human beings never commit the same genocides ever again that we have already seen too many times in history? We need to ask the hard questions. And so I believe your guys being here today is a good sign that you guys are ready to ask those questions. And that's why I want to end by thanking you guys. Thank you for being here, because too many people are afraid, and you guys weren't afraid. You guys are ready to go out and fight this issue. You are the warriors that your children need, and I'm ready to see you guys on the battlefield.